Hey everyone, it's your friendly neighborhood Lambomang here. Welcome to another VR video. So about a week ago, I put up a video showing off Skyrim VR overloaded with 285 visual mods. Now a lot of you guys love this video. The video got it's just hit 20,000 views, which is the first of my videos to hit 20,000. So thank you to everyone who watched the video, who liked, who commented. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it was really cool to see that sort of support behind it. Now, a lot of you are asking, what mods was I using when I did that video? And I would have liked to have done this video earlier, but unfortunately I was out with a cold. Hard to do videos when you haven't got a voice, but now I'm finally gotten around to talking about the mods that I used. So 285 mods is a lot, so I'm not going to talk about every single mod that I used in this video. I will leave a list in the description below with my exact mod list. But I'm going to go through the modding guide that I followed. It's called Nordic Skyrim. It's a pretty awesome, pretty comprehensive mod guide. And it's split up into different categories for your different kinds of mods. So I'm going to talk about an overview of the mods that I chose, the reasons why I chose them, and maybe some tips like maybe you should choose this mod, maybe you shouldn't choose this mod, depending on your system's power. So let's get into it. It's a pretty big guide and it's going to take a while. So the Nordic Skyrim guide, I will leave a link to that in the description down below. It will require you to sign up with a Nexus Mods account to be able to view it because some of the mods in there do contain adult content. When it comes to body replaces for your males and your females, there are options to have fully nude versions, which if you're into that, by all means, go ahead. These mods do have non-nude options though, which is what I use because I am a nude hating prude. So yeah, you have to create an account. You'll have to turn, okay, I want to see adult content. It doesn't really show anything screenshot-wise in the mod guide itself, so you should be good to go on through and pick out the mods that you do want out of it. But once you're in there, it'll cover pretty much everything from choosing a mod manager and getting that set up. I might also do a video on how to get mod managers set up with Skyrim VR because it's a little bit different, but I won't do that in this video. I've already got enough to talk about in this video. So it'll also talk you through load order so you don't have to use loot to make sure your mods don't conflict. It'll cover that as you go through the guide. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. So let's start with the first section, which is user interface and core mods. Now, when it comes to UI mods, basically just don't use them. For Skyrim VR, they rewrote how the UI works, so it actually works in VR. Any mods that modify your normal Skyrim UI won't work and will probably cause the game to crash. So Sky UI, even though that's a really nice UI mod for flat Skyrim, doesn't work in Skyrim VR. So from this first section, the mods that I used here was Lanterns of Skyrim, which is a pretty cool one that just adds lanterns all over the world, makes it a little bit more realistic. So Lanterns of Skyrim, the light balance patch to help fix that up. The unofficial Skyrim Special Edition patch. That one's a pretty good one to have. Because as we all know, Bethesda games tend to be pretty buggy to the point of brokenness in some cases. And so the unofficial Skyrim Special Edition patch is a patch that will essentially fix a lot of bugs that Bethesda left in. Now, I've tested this one. It does work with Skyrim VR. You're not going to run into any issues with that. So you can grab that one. Cutting Room Floor is also a good one, which adds in some content that was left out of the game at release. Content that the files were still there, so people managed to patch the content back in. That one also works. I haven't run into any issues with that in Skyrim VR just yet. Fast travel speed fix is also a pretty good one. So this one, whenever you fast travel in the world, it adjusts the amount of time that passes during that fast travel to make it seem more realistic. So when you teleport from one place to another on the other side of the world, it'll make time pass as if you'd actually walked there yourself. That one I find pretty good. A quality world map is also a pretty good mod, which overhauls the top-down map when you're seeing the whole world. It also gives the options to be able to see the roads on the maps, which comes in pretty handy when you're like, okay, I want to get over to here, but there's mountains in the way. I don't know where to go, so I don't have to climb over all the mountains. It'll show all the main roads on the map, and so you'll be able to more easily plot out your path. Skyrim Script Extender 64 does not work. They need to make another version specific for VR. Apparently the developers are working on it, so we'll hopefully see that sooner rather than later. But what that one is it essentially allows mods to change more stuff in Skyrim. So not having this does limit the kinds of mods that you can use in Skyrim VR. In the mod guide though, it does mark which mods require Skyrim script extender, the little SKSE. If you see a mod that requires that, skip it. It's not going to work. But thankfully, when it comes to visual enhancements, you generally don't need script extender. That's usually for the more gameplay changing mods. This does have a bunch of gameplay changing mods in it, but I'm not going to talk about those ones because I haven't tried them yet. All I wanted to do is overhaul the visuals, overhaul the audio, and that's pretty much all that I did for the game. I haven't done any gameplay changes. So also in this first section, you're going to want to get the XP32 Maximum Skeleton mod, which changes around some of the skeletons for body animations and stuff, which you will need if you're going to use some of the body mods listed down later in the guide. One mod that I do wish worked is Alternate Start, Live Another Life. That's a pretty cool mod that when you start the game, you don't have to go through that big long intro sequence every single time. It allows you to be like, okay, I want to start as this kind of a character in this area, and it'll give you like a bunch of starting gear, and it'll put you somewhere like, say, Riften or any other cities like that. It's a really good mod, but it doesn't work with Skyrim VR, unfortunately. It really sucks because the amount of times I've had to go through the intro sequence while modding Skyrim VR has been really frustrating. So yeah, we'll have to wait till that one gets fixed for Skyrim VR. Music mods I haven't touched yet. I'm generally just fine with the music that's in the base game. Large texture mods and some LODs. Now this is where we start getting into the fun part. So, first most important thing, static mesh improvement mod. This enhances a lot of the meshes, the smaller meshes in the game. Makes them look a lot prettier, doesn't have too much of a performance impact, I don't think. But that one I think is pretty essential. Better dynamic snow is optional. I do like how it looks, so I always install that. Same for dynamic ash and ashbound. They all change, like the ash shaders are related to the snow shaders. So if you get all three of them, it looks pretty good. Ruins Clutter Improved is similar to Static Mesh Improvement mod, but mainly for meshes you'll find inside of ruins. Enhanced Textures Details UV is one that changes around some of the UV mapping so that textures tile more on certain objects. I do like how this one looks. It may decrease your performance a little bit if you're on a lower end system, so you'll have to test that one. Know that that one might cause issues. Skyrim Realistic Overhaul is a pretty nice, massive texture replacement pack. Covers all sorts of stuff in Skyrim VR, from like cities, landscapes, all kinds of crazy stuff. That's a pretty good base to build off of. From there, the guide recommends a bunch of other texture packs like Noble Skyrim. It's really good for architecture. Yalo for more landscapes, which is also a pretty good one, which is what I chose over Solstheim Landscape and Furniture. SSE Texture Pack by Asmodeus is also a pretty good one. And HD ground textures I also use. So HD ground textures I used the 1024 versions instead of the 2048 by 2048 versions. Because having the 1024 version I found helped with performance because, you're not rendering as big of textures on the ground. Ars Farmhouse and Handcarts is pretty good for your farmhouses and farm meshes. Skyrim 3D Walls looks kind of cool, but I skipped it because I'm like, it doesn't really have that much of an effect, I don't think. And, save on the meshes just a little bit for performance. You can try it for yourself, see if you like it or not. But for me, I was like, the walls are good enough for me already. And then Just Ice I skipped because I liked the ones that were in Yalo. The ice textures that were in Noble and Yalo were pretty good. Didn't bother with Just Ice. LODs is there are ways to generate LODs. When you start changing around certain mods like your terrain textures or your trees, you are going to want to be able to generate LODs for the stuff in the distance. If you don't know how LODs work, it's called level of detail. So the further away an object is, it shrinks the amount of points to render it in a mesh and lowers the resolution of the textures, thins out the trees, that kind of stuff. So some mods will change how stuff in the distance looks, and SSE LOD generator helps to regenerate it so it looks and matches up properly again. However, It doesn't work with Skyrim VR just yet. So if you want to be able to generate those long distance LODs, you need to have Skyrim Special Edition loaded up with the exact same mods that you used in Skyrim VR, generate your LODs from there, and then transfer them over into Skyrim VR, which is a bit of an involved process. I haven't tried that myself yet. So yeah. However, I did get terrain LOD redone from here because that doesn't require SSE LOD gen and HD LOD textures as well. You can give those a try, but yeah, skip the SSE LOD gen and the Dindo LOD because you're going to need Skyrim Special Edition, non-VR, to use those. Additional quests and DLC-sized mods. I skipped this part because, again, I didn't want to affect the gameplay. I just wanted to affect the visuals. I will revisit this section sometime in the future, but for now I skipped it. Major gameplay overhauls, also skipped that. Blood and perks. I grabbed enhanced blood textures because it makes your blood splashes, all that sort of stuff, look a bit better. That one I grabbed from this section because that one I think looks pretty cool. And then for the actual options when you install the mod is large splatter size, like what they suggest here, but instead of going long effects distance, I went with medium effects distance. So having it medium effect distance means I save on performance. Again, if you have a lower spec system, try the shorter length distance, or maybe skip this one. I don't think this one has too much of an effect on performance, but experiment with the medium effect distance or the short effect distance. And we keep on scrolling through bandits, animals, werewolves and vampires, combat, skip all of this, enemy difficulty, creatures and textures. So, this has a lot of different mods listed here. The first one they list, Bellyache's Animal and Creature Pack, will cover a lot of the animals. So, it will cover mostly everything, and then you can scroll through here, pick and choose which ones you like, and it'll overwrite a lot of the ones from Bellyache's Creature Pack. Again, so that mainly comes down to personal taste, but if you wanted to get any one of these mods from here, start with Bellyache's. That'll cover mostly everything, and then also the HD Dragon Replacer covers most of the dragons. Diverse Dragons adds some more kinds of dragons. There's also retextures for Alduin. It's kind of cool to have a look that's a bit different to the default look. You'll see that once I start doing gameplay videos. He looks pretty heckin' sweet. He's definitely gotten quite the upgrade. Go through this list, pick and choose the ones that you like. These don't really have much of an effect on performance, except for the resolution. I chose 2K wherever possible. I didn't touch 4K textures at all, because 4K is just going to kill your system, especially with VR. So for all these creature mods, I always chose 2K if it was available, 1K if it wasn't. Pretty much all of them have 2K options. I don't think there were any that was 4K only. There's one here, Transparent and Refractive Icicle and Frost Atronach. Haven't used that one because it adds light refraction, which can be a bit of a performance hog, so I'm like, maybe I'll test that one in the future, but I avoided that one because I knew that one's going to drop more frames than I would like it to. Animal textures. Again, some of these are covered by Bellyache's mod from up the top, but you can go through, you can pick and choose which ones you like. Maybe you'll like some in here better than in Bellyache's. For the most part, I stuck with Bellyache's ones. And again, keeping in mind 2K textures, don't get 4K textures. Additional birds section, I skipped. This just adds more bird types. I just kept it at the default ones that were in the game. And also skip the additional creatures and enemies, unless you want to add more enemy types. Again, I just kept all the enemy types vanilla. Didn't add any more enemy types. Weathers. Weathers change so much in the game. They change like how the lighting works, what sort of weathers you have. Some add seasons as well. So it gives you 4 different options. Wait, 5, no, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 options for weather mods. Some of these do work together, some of them don't. When I did the video, I used Obsidian Weathers, which looks pretty cool. However, I have switched over to Vivid Weathers. Vivid Weathers, in my personal opinion, just looks that bit better. And I also found it works better for rain and snow. So some of the problems I had with Obsidian is that when I was in the snow, you'd have the snow in world space, and then some snow was like attached to your face, and you'd end up these really big snowflakes like right here in front of your face. Didn't look that great in VR. whereas Vivid Weathers just has the option for just world space snow, which looks good in VR. So I recommend Vivid Weathers for that. And Vivid Weathers requires a few compatibility patches for certain mods we'll use further in the guide. So the guide will tell you about which ones to choose. Okay, vegetation, mountains, snow, and roads. And a lot of people corrected me on this one, and I thought this was really funny. And apparently I've been pronouncing the word foliage wrong for my whole life. I always thought it was pronounced foliage. Yeah, so thank you to everyone who pointed out how wrong I was. I will make sure to keep that in mind further on. Because now we're talking about foliage mods. The Great Forest of Whiterun Hold. Optional. Definitely optional. And I definitely skipped this one. So over near Whiterun, there's like a big open plain area. This replaces that with the forest. And I kept it as the plain because even though the forest looks cool, forests are where you lose most of your frames because the vegetation, the foliage, that's where you start to lose your frames. So I skipped it. I just kept all the default forests. The less forests, the better, pretty much. Eek's Renthal Flora Collection. Pretty cool mod that changes around how some of the flora looks. Mountains. Now, mountains, this one mainly comes down to taste. I like Majestic Mountains. Majestic Mountains looks pretty cool, and it's got a few options inside of it itself. The mod guide recommends the Dark Side texture pack. That's what the author likes the most. I prefer the default texture pack inside of Majestic Mountains. Again, this will come down to taste. Like, I know some people in the comments weren't a fan of how the mountains looked in my modded version. So, there are a lot of other options here. You got 5 other options that the guide recommends. Definitely check them out. Choose which ones you like the most. Trees. Okay, so for tree mods, a lot of people like to use Skyrim Trees 3D. I know it's been pretty popular on the Skyrim VR subreddit. I'm not entirely a fan of it though. When I play Skyrim VR, I like to turn temporal anti-aliasing off because it's too blurry. I'm not really a fan of how it works. And plus, turning it off gives you a little bit more performance to play with. I then just super sample the game to about 140% to get rid of most of the jaggies. However, Skyrim Trees 3D, I do find it adds a lot of jaggies when it comes to like the leaves that it uses, the dead branches, the dead trees, that kind of stuff. They got a lot of small details which add a lot of jaggies. So I personally prefer Forests of Dibella. These have a lot bigger leaves, a lot bigger, smoother leaves. You don't get as many jaggies with Forests of Dibella as you do with Skyrim Trees 3D. I know there are ways to tweak the AA to make it smoother, but I generally don't like any blurriness from it at all, so I just ditch it completely. So that's something to keep in mind. Still give Skyrim Trees 3D a look. It is still a pretty cool mod, but personally I prefer Forests of Dibella. I think that works better with the no AA and super sampling option. For grasses, I go with hairdos Brom, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. That one's got some good options in it. I went with the default options. There is a performance option in there as well, so if you're on a lower system, definitely put it on the performance options. It lowers the texture resolution of the grass. Again, you don't really need that high resolution for your grass. And it changes the density of the grass as well. Most of your frame rate loss is going to come from your foliage mods. You'll have to play around with those. You might even have to skip them completely. I would probably suggest, if you had to go with only one, I would say go with the trees over the grass. The default grass in Skyrim isn't that bad, but upgrading the trees definitely is, it's definitely worth it. For snow, I went with Nordic Snow. Nordic Snow is a pretty nice snow shader. Not sure how much that affects the performance. I don't believe it affects it that much. But again, if you're running low on performance, you can try messing around with having that one on or off. For roads, I went with Real Roads for Skyrim, Real Roads Mesh Fix. For road signs, Weathered Road Signs looks pretty good. Increases the resolution of your road signs, so now you can actually read what they say. That one helps with the immersiveness. But again, there are options here, so you can choose which ones you like the most. Area overhauls. Haven't really touched them that much because, again, it kind of changes the gameplay around a little bit. I have tried out JK's Whiterun, which looks pretty good. JK Skyrim also overhauls a lot of the cities and little towns in Skyrim. Again, you can try that one if you want, but it will change how the cities are laid out just a little bit. I do want to explore that one further. Village and hamlet overhauls, skipped that as well. Interiors, also skipped that. Environmental structures, skipped that. Extra touches, skipped that. Shops and inns, also skipped that. Player homes, skipped that as well. You can have a look at some of these. Haven't tested them myself, but they're just extra areas. They won't affect your performance. More textures. All right, so this is where we get into textures for the caves, the mines, the ruins. Install underground. Underground's a pretty good one. Overhauls most of everything. If you install that, you can skip the next few ones underneath it. Again, you can choose based on what you like. If you like the ones in underground, go with them. If not, you can install all these other ones instead. Same with some of these. They're all pretty optional. Again, choose the ones that you like. Special locations. Didn't really get into that much. I should probably check out the College of Winterhold texture upgrade. Noble Skyrim does cover a lot of these areas and locations though, because it's a general architecture retexture. Same with the optional city retextures, again covered by Noble Skyrim, Realistic Skyrim Overhaul, and a little bit of Yalo as well. So yeah, these are all pretty optional. For metal, I grabbed the Ancient Dwemer Metal. That one looks pretty cool. Also grabbed Enhanced Ore Veins. It upgrades the look of them a bit. You can make them glow if you want them to stand out just that little bit more. Banners, rugs, and pelts. I grabbed Ennead Banners, Ragnarok because Ragnarok is such a cool name, and Peltapalooza as well. Signs, these just upgrade some of the signs in the cities for the shops. Again, pick which ones you like out of that. Boats. Again, you can choose which ones you like, or you can skip them if you like the default boats. Statues and shrines, I grabbed all of these ones because they do make things look pretty cool. A lot of them give you options for the texture resolution as well, so, if you've got a lower end PC, choose the lower resolutions again. Stone and ruins extras. Some of these I grabbed, like Rustic Monuments and Tombstones, Halidun's Retexture Project, I grabbed all the mods from this section. And then miscellaneous, I grabbed the HD Lava for Dawn Guard, and that's all I grabbed from there. I haven't checked out the dust particles. I'm not sure how much that'll affect performance because you don't want to bump up your particle effects too much. And the chopping block wood is covered by your tree mods. Whatever tree mod you choose will probably also include the chopping blocks and stumps. NPC mods, I skipped them because some of them work, some of them don't, I think. I'm not entirely sure which ones do and don't work. Furniture, you can grab some of these if you want. They are covered by Noble already. So if you went for the Noble texture pack, a lot of these will be covered already. Some of them do look pretty nice. Again, choose which ones you like out of there. Clutter, I reckon, is pretty optional. If you've got the extra frames left over after all of this, you can add some of these mods, but if you start to lose frames, I'd probably start by dumping some of these because clutter I don't find as important. In order of priority, I'm like landscape textures, character textures, NPC textures, your weapon textures, and then clutter I put pretty low. So if you're losing frames, clutter I find is a good section to dump. Same for food and ingredients. Again, not as vital to have them looking like full-on 4K. Again, mix and match, choose what you like. Skip them if you're losing performance over it. Same for your bottles and your soul gems. Leather and camping. Again, choose which ones you like out of here. Same for the bling. I can't exactly remember which ones I chose for bling. I think I just chose a few, like Coin Pouch Master, Dragon Claws, Snazzy Model Ship, which only improves one single model in one area. There's a model ship in one of the quests you have to steal or something, I believe, and yeah, this mod upgrades that ship. So that's the very definition of a if you skip it, you probably won't miss it mod. Plants, a lot of these were covered by Eek's Renthal Flora Collection. So all I chose from here was Death Bell, which makes the Death Bells look pretty awesome. You got options for colors and all sorts of things like that. Again, a lot of these are covered by the foliage mods we talked about earlier, so only pick these if you like the look of these over what you installed earlier. Again, extra touches, a lot of these are installed by like Skyrim Realistic Overhaul or Noble. Paper, Book Covers of Skyrim is a really cool mod. It pretty much just overhauls the textures for the outsides of the books, the book covers of all the books in Skyrim. With the amount of books that you run into, building your own library inside your own player house, yeah, this is a pretty nice mod to have. The rest of these are mostly covered by Skyrim Realistic Overhaul once again, so you can skip some of those. Effects. I mentioned in the video, corpses burned UHD is a really nice touch. It makes the corpses look like they're burnt if they're killed by fire. So I went with that. For the fire effects, I believe I went with Cinematic Fire Effects 2. I preferred how this looked over Ultimate HD Fire Effects. Again, you can choose. Embers HD is pretty cool as well, but make sure you get the Skyrim Special Edition version. Frozen Electrocuted Combustion adds some effects for depending on how NPCs have died, whether it's by electricity, poison, all sorts of things like that. Voltage I chose over Electrify SE for your sparks and your electricity-based magic. And then, yeah, again, mostly optional ones after that. In the section after that, last but not least, I went with Animated Clutter SSE. Now, this is a pretty cool one that adds some more opening animations to certain objects. Things like if you open a sack, instead of the menu popping up straight away, the sack will sort of be animated to open up a bit. Then it pops up. It's a nice touch. Can be a bit annoying because now some objects take longer to open. So you can try it. If you don't like it, uninstall it. It's a small mod. It's a nice touch, but it can be a bit irritating. So weapons, armor, and textures for those. A Midian-born Book of Silence has some really good weapons and armors mods. I installed both of those. I followed the guide for the options because some options inside the mods might cause your game to crash. So make sure you follow what the guide has to say about those two mods. Same for the Book of Silence uniques, went for that as well. Rustic clothing, rustic forsworn. I skipped the cloaks. I'm not a fan of cloaks. If you like cloaks, you can have a look at them. Lean Wolf's Better Shaped Weapons is a cool mod. It makes the weapons a bit more realistically shaped. I was happy with the way that the weapons are shaped in the vanilla game, so I skipped this mod, but I have tried it and it's pretty cool. Expanded Skyrim Weaponry adds more weapons. I didn't go with that. I just went for retextures. I didn't go for adding extra weapons or armors. So again, I skipped all that, skipped all these. Real bows looks pretty cool. It does make the bows look a bit more realistic and like they're made out of wood. It gives you alternative textures for certain armors. You can look through those, choose which ones you like. I don't think I chose any from here. I just stuck with the defaults because, when you're installing this many mods, you don't want to spend forever on all the small little details. I'm like, okay, this big mod pack that covers a lot of stuff is good enough. If I went through and installed everything in here, I'd probably have like 350 mods by the time I was finished. Guards and soldiers, though. Midian-born Imperial Light and Studded, I chose that. I went with Stormcloak Armor Revival because this has a pretty cool option to give the Stormcloaks tartans. It changes the material on their outfits to more of a tartan type thing, and I actually kind of like how that looks. Again, it's optional. If you don't like the look of that, you don't have to use it, but I personally like how that looks. And the shields. Any shields is a really awesome shield retexture. Again, you may prefer not to use that one. It's optional. If you like the look of it, it's a pretty cool one to grab. NPC overhauls. This is where most of the fun is, I find. Alright, starting with the hairstyles. Apache sky and hair is pretty essential. Natural retexture is optional. It makes the hairs a little bit less shiny because I find that by default, Apache sky hair is a bit shiny, so I always go with the natural hair retexture to make it sort of fit in with the rest of the game. Because as you can see up here, it's pretty shiny and a lot cleaner than hair would look if Skyrim was a real place. Chaos hairdos is also pretty cool. However, you'll have to install not the latest version. You'll have to go back a version. You'll want to grab the old file. The new file, some of the later mods haven't been updated to use the new file, so you will have to use the older version. Okay, so for the major NPC overhauls, gives you 4 options, which is Babes of Skyrim, Diversity, Total Character Makeover, and Wyco. I don't recommend Wyco because it does look pretty cool, but it doesn't really work with many other NPC mods. I go with Babes of Skyrim, which is also what the mod guide recommends because it's pretty compatible with a lot of different things. I mean, it's called Babes of Skyrim, but it does also overhaul some of the male NPCs as well. If you don't use that, diversity is a pretty good one, as is total character makeover. And then if you don't really want to get into the nitty gritty of all these other NPC mods, Waiko is pretty good if you just want the one mod to rule them all. Here we start to get into textures for the Khajiit and the Argonians. I got both of them. It gives you options for how they look in there. Again, I chose the 2K versions. I don't really go with 4K for much of anything in this whole mod setup. For male skins, I chose the Vitruvia skin textures. Again, it's got options, so you can choose which ones you like. Okay, for female bodies, these are the ones that are the nude mods. CBBE, UNP, they're both classified as nude mods, so you will need to have an adult account to be able to download them off of Nexus mods. However, they all have options for non-nude setups when you actually install them. You know, have a proper bikini on people. So I do that. Feminine Khajiit textures, feminine Argonian textures, they match the masculine ones from up above. They are nude mods, but they don't have non-nude options. So if you're a prude like me, you may want to skip those mods. If you're not, go for it. Skin textures. Again, options. I went for pure skin. That was my favorite out of them. And then under extras, realistic hair colors. Makes the hair look a bit more realistically colored. Superior lore-friendly hair is a nice upgrade to the default hairs that are in the game. And improved eyes, well, yeah, it improves the eyes. It's right there in the name. I didn't bother with the T3 textures because I'm not really getting a good look at people's teeth that much. Plus, because of the resolution of VR headsets, not as vital to have that much detail on smaller meshes. So I skipped that. I grabbed beards because beards are pretty cool. I should probably grow one myself one day. And some of these mods here just add options for what you can do to your own character, which I skipped because once you go through the character creation screen, you pretty much never see your character ever again. So those mods are kind of useless. Large NPC overhauls. These will only install these if you chose Total Character Makeover earlier. If you chose anything else, like I did, skip this section. Medium-sized NPC overhauls works with Babes of Skyrim, which is what I chose. Distinct husbands, distinct people. Distinct people is the one that requires the older version of KS hairdos. So if you skip that one, install the newer version of KS hairdos. If you do want this one, install the older version of KS hairdos. Metal sabers, beautiful ladies, all the ones in this section I installed. Except for Gaiot NPCs. Some of these mods do require that ESPs and meshes are converted from old Skyrim to Special Edition Skyrim. If any mods require converting, I always just skip them. Couldn't be bothered going through all that. Smaller NPC overhauls, I went with improved bards, Skyrim Nobody NPC replacer, and that's all I chose from there. There are mods for single NPCs, which you can get into if you want to. I skipped that because these are covered by some of the larger NPC overhauls up here. Followers section just adds extra followers to the game. Again, I skipped that because, you know, I just want the vanilla stuff to start off with. I'll experiment with more of these kinds of things once I've actually played more of vanilla Skyrim. Again, with follower packs, skipped them. Female followers, less immersive followers. Additional armors I also skipped, just kept the vanilla armors. General additional armor and weapons, also skipped that. There are some cool ones in here, like the Lord of the Rings weapon collection. I probably will actually install that one because those weapons would be pretty cool to use in VR. The Kids Are Alright is a children overhaul. Makes them look a lot less ugly. Again, you've got the option for the Kids Are Alright or RS Children Overhaul. I prefer the Kids Are Alright. Some people might prefer RS Children Overhaul because the Kids Are Alright does make some of the kids look a bit weird. But in general, I do prefer it over the original vanilla children models. Pack mods and more magic. Again, I skipped those. They add extra gameplay stuff, so I'm not certain what does and what doesn't work with Skyrim VR. Textures and effects. So, subsurface scattering shaders for skins. Looks pretty cool. It changes how the light sort of affects the NPCs or anyone's skins in the game. You may want to experiment with that one because that one might add a little bit more performance overhead. It's not too heavy, but yeah, if your system's powerful enough, that one is a nice touch to add. Now, the textures for the clouds and the stars and the sky, they are covered by your weather mods, but if you do like the looks of these, you can install them. I skipped them because at this point, this far into the guide, I got really lazy. I'm like, I don't want to do all these really tiny specific mods. Obsidian Mountain Fogs, though, is a pretty nice mod. It adds a lot of fog around all the mountains, which helps in VR because it helps disguise how ugly some of the stuff gets from a distance. That one's a pretty cool one to have in VR. Now, audio mods. As per usual, there's a ton of different options. I went with Reverb and Ambience Overhaul, Sounds of Skyrim Complete, and Immersive Sounds Compendium. They're all three mods that work pretty well with each other. Some of them have got patches to work with each other. They've got patches to work with Vivid Weathers or whatever weather pack you choose. These ones I find sound the nicest, especially once you add the spatial audio mod, which I'll also talk about because it's not in the guide itself. So those three mods work pretty well together in VR. Gameplay changes in water. I skipped the game changes, skipped the combat, skipped the crafting, skipped the tweaks, skipped the crime, portable lighting, the character, NPC, because a lot of these do require Skyrim script extender. Some of them may also not work with systems that have been reworked for VR. Load order sensitive mods. Realistic Water 2. It does change how the water looks, which does also affect performance. So you may want to skip this one, again, if you've got a weaker system. Combine it with Beautiful Water Replacement Overhaul if you can use this though. Grab these three mods here. So yeah, Realistic Water 2, Beautiful Water Replacement Overhaul, Realistic Water 2 LOD Fix, they all work well together. Immersive Citizens changes around some of the AI for the citizens. I have not tried this one. Again, I'm still just going with visuals and audio overhauls. I will start messing around with this kind of stuff later on. I've heard this one does work in Skyrim VR, so it's worth a try, but yeah, I haven't tried it. And the rest of the stuff I skipped. Lighting and extras. I prefer enhanced lights and effects. That's one that I like to use, and it has pretty good compatibility with a bunch of other mods. Some people prefer realistic lighting overhaul. I haven't tried that one. I always generally go with enhanced lights and effects. But check out how they look. Choose your favorite from there. They generally change how the lighting inside works. Doesn't really affect the performance all that much, so you should be good to use those. And then the rest of this I mostly skipped. High Poly Project is kind of like the static mesh improvement mod from all the way at the beginning. If you're on a low end system, skip this one because it will decrease your performance. Sexy statues is optional if you like your statues to be sexy. If not, you can just skip it. Animation mods. I generally skipped these. I'm quite happy with how the vanilla animations look. And then a lot of these mods anyway affect your character's animations. And again, you can't see your body, so it's a bit of a waste to install them. ENB and Reshade section. Pretty much I skipped this because I don't believe either ENB or Reshade work with VR. They do really nice visual. They add extra visual features that aren't in the base game itself. They look really cool on Skyrim on just a flat screen. However, in VR, if they worked in VR, they would add a lot more to your performance requirements. So even if they did work, I would probably skip them as well. And last steps, SSE fixes a bug in Skyrim that once you start to overload it with mods, it'll drop the frame rate just because of the amount of mods you have, not because of anything being rendered in the game itself. This will help fix that. And I think that's it. We're at the end of the guide. That's pretty much, yeah, that's the guide in a nutshell. That's what I did for my video with the 285 mods. But yeah, as you saw, a lot of those mods were smaller optional ones. They were like nice big packs that covered a load of stuff, and then smaller mods that tweaked individual items. So if I just went with the overhaul packs, I would probably have a lot less mods installed. So you got options if you've got a lower end system. So I would recommend go through the guide yourself, read through it. It tells you a lot about how to choose which mods you want to use. This has just been a sort of a brief, I say brief, but the video is probably going to be like half an hour or longer than that even. The raw footage right now is at 58 minutes and 33 seconds. This is going to be a big video. But yeah, that's just a look at what I chose, the thought process behind what I chose, and just some tips on how to get the most performance out of these mods. So characters always go with 2K. Your foliage mods will be where you lose most of your performance, so you may have to skip those if you've got a lower spec PC. Go with whatever performance options there are for the grass, and just generally have fun. If you have a good enough computer that you can install this many mods, it is pretty awesome, as you saw before. I will leave this video here. I'm going to start recording a gameplay of Skyrim VR now, like a proper gameplay, because in that last video there's only so much I could show off. Once I start playing it, we're going to see so many of these more mods start to come into effect, like the dragon mods, the magic mods, that kind of stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this video, I hope you enjoyed the previous video, and I hope you enjoy the playthroughs that I'm going to start doing of Skyrim VR once I'm done here. So if you want to keep up to date with those, hit the subscribe button, comment down below, let me know what you're running, if you're running any mods on Skyrim VR, what you've found works with your specs, because again, I got a pretty beefy PC. I want to know what people on lower spec PCs have gotten to work. If we can help out the whole community with this would be pretty cool. Pool our knowledge together of Skyrim VR modding, and yeah, we can get some setups that work for everyone. So, I hope to see you in the comments. I'll be replying, I'll be chatting, ask me any questions down there, and I will see you in the next video.